Why is beauty important? Well, I've been fortunate enough to have visited Europe a number of times and some great old European cathedrals. And there's even some nice cathedrals in America and some other nice things in America. But, and especially in Europe, there's just a density of beauty that certainly doesn't exist here. And not just the cathedrals, but all sorts of other things, monuments and, just ordinary buildings, constructed for various purposes. A lot of them are a lot more beautiful, especially the older ones, the ones that have existed for more than 100 or 200 years, which in many towns and cities in Europe you can find a lot of. They're just incredibly beautiful and calming. And that beauty is, it can be awe-inspiring. Like you go into a cathedral, an old medieval cathedral, and it's just awe-inspiring. Like you're just taken by it. You're struck by it. And these buildings, many of them are 800 years old. Now, what kind of bland, brutalist, modern architecture monstrosity is going to be around in 800 years? Not one of them. Not one. None of them will be. Because, with something beautiful, you have an incentive to keep it up. You have an incentive to maintain it. You have an incentive to cherish it. And that doesn't exist for something that is supposedly functional. And so that makes it less functional than something that is beautiful, that has, extraneous ornamentation or, a style that's harmonious with its surroundings or whatever else. So beauty does have a function. Beauty does have a utility. And it makes people feel a connection to it. And it makes people feel possession over it and ownership and responsibility for it. And they maintain it and they keep it up and they cherish it and they protect it. And that's something people don't do with bland, like brutalist, ugly, just supposedly utilitarian stuff. They don't cherish that stuff. They don't identify with that stuff. They don't, they're not awe-inspired by that stuff. They don't protect it. They don't maintain it. They don't keep it up. And a lot of it just turns into, derelict. Just derelict and, vandalized and ugly, even uglier, trash, garbage. It started out as garbage, but it just becomes, explicitly trash, explicitly garbage and strewn with garbage and, graffitied and everything else. Because people don't care about that shit. They don't care about that. Why would you care about something that's square and bland and featureless and, supposedly utilitarian? But, it's lacking in an essential utility. People have to identify with it. That's part of the function of these things is people have to identify with it. And they have to cherish it to a certain extent and, want to maintain it and defend it. And that's really a big impetus behind modern art and modern architecture is these people don't want you to want to defend things. They don't want you to want to maintain things. They don't want you to feel possessive, because they're trying to dispossess you. And they're trying to destroy your culture and your nation, and they're trying to overrun you and dispossess you and disenfranchise you, and they don't want you to resist. And why would you resist if all your shit is ugly? What is there to defend if all your shit is ugly? What is there to, to feel grateful for having inherited if it's all fucking rubbish? Nothing. And so they want you to be demoralized. They want you to be discouraged. They want you to feel like an atomistic individual in your little shabby apartment, square, functional, utilitarian apartment with all your modern furniture, that's cheap-ass particle board modern furniture that, you bought down at wherever in a flat pack. That's the same as everybody else's. Or maybe a little bit different, whatever. But you don't feel any connection to that stuff, and you don't feel any connection to anybody else around you. But if you if you go to a cathedral, like a beautiful, awe-inspiring cathedral that's been there for 800 years and it's just spectacular, then you feel a real connection to that, and you feel a connection to the other people that you meet down there every week as you do your religious rituals or whatever. And so there's a sense of community that arises around it, because everybody has that identification to that thing that is beautiful and awe-inspiring, and they participate in those rituals that cement those connections also to each other. And so you get, community and cohesion. And you don't get that with modern, brutalist, supposedly utilitarian stuff. There's nothing like that. That connection doesn't exist. To the things, and then to the people you share the things with, you still don't develop that connection. That connection doesn't transfer to them. And so it's really a good way to demoralize and depress and discourage and disorganize and disunite people. And that's what they're aiming to do. That's what they're trying to do with all this ugliness. To make it easier to carry out their agendas and carry out their programs without people resisting them. And that's really where a lot of this stuff has its impetus. I mean, if you look at Soviet stuff, communist stuff, it's all ugly and brutal, and that's what they were going for. And I don't know all the details, but I'm pretty sure a lot of these artists and architects and everything else in the West that championed these styles, a lot of them had connections to those ideologies, those communist Marxist ideologies, or even funding in some cases, or support, material support in other ways from those those internationalist enemies, those internationalist socialist enemies that we were fighting for the entire length of the Cold War. And they kind of snuck in through the back door, right, with art and architecture and pop culture and everything else, and just made everything ugly and grotesque and discouraging and depressing. And that's a good way to disunite people and to dispossess people, because they don't feel any possessiveness over something that's hideous, that's grotesque, that's repulsive. Same thing with all this body positivity and fat acceptance stuff. Why are you going to feel a connection to people around you if those people are gross, if they're ugly, if they're slovenly? What kind of motivation are you going to have to identify with those people, or to defend those people, or to, work together with those people, or whatever? It's not going to happen. So I think that's the motive for a lot of that. And, in contrast, when you have beauty, great beauty, art, architecture, aesthetics in any realm of human activity, fitness, heroes, people who are exemplars, moral exemplars, or physical exemplars, or, whatever the case may be, these are people who inspire and you can identify with. And you feel a connection. You can feel a connection to those kind of people and to things that are beautiful, and also that have a local character. There's a local character that arises in a particular place and a particular time where things fit together and they congruent, right? And they're harmonious. They don't clash. And so that marks things as being part of a particular time and a particular place. And so something that does fit into that context has more value to people in that context than something that doesn't, something that clashes, something that conflicts. And so that's a way of adding value for people in that context. And at the same time, it marks that as being theirs, as being characteristically theirs. And so they can identify with it and feel possessive and want to defend it and protect it. And it also makes it less valuable to people from other contexts, right, from other places who have maybe a different local character that they want their things to conform to. And so you can really raise the value of your things by making them conform to the local character that prevails in that area, in that time, in that place. You can raise the value of your things to you and to others like you, and you can lower the value of them to different people, right? People who have their own local character, who have their own local style that they want things to conform to. And so it's a way of protecting your things for you and for your progeny, and so that to ensure that your inheritance will accrue to your progeny and not to somebody else's. So it has tremendous utility that, you know, and modern architecture and modern design tries to strip all that away, all that local character, all that local style, tries to strip it all away so that everything is bland and uniform and interchangeable, right? Because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to create a global mass market of bland, uniform, interchangeable consumers consuming bland, uniform, interchangeable products. And local character gets in the way of that. Local character, you know, limits the size of markets and limits the size of, firms, capitalist firms. And so, you know, capitalists and socialists are really working hand in hand here because they want to break down those barriers and they want to, you know, erase that local character and that local style and impose like a bland, uniform, featureless, interchangeable global style for a bland, uniform, featureless, interchangeable global order. And, it's really just grotesque. But they get the foot in the door with the ugly, brutalist, grotesque shit, and they weaken your resolve to protect that, to protect what's yours, to protect your local character, your local style. And that's their foot in the door. And once they've got you demoralized and depressed and, not feeling any connection to the things or people around you and, not willing to defend any of it, then they can move in and do what they will. And so, that's what's going on there. And that's why beauty is so subversive. And that's why beauty is so important and so valuable. And it is tremendously valuable and tremendously useful. And so those are some things I want you to consider.